Welcome to our present state versus history on Speaker. Here we are focused on the current events of our culture through the principles of our history, trying to make sense of the culture and the mindset of today. I am your host, Ray Mayfield. Okay, folks, here we are back on the pod. It's been a little while since we've recorded an episode. I apologize for the delay. There's really no excuse. I've just been kind of contemplating on a direction to go, whether to continue with these principles of freedom that we've been dealing with or what to do here. And I believe we're going to kind of shift gears. This will probably be the last episode of these principles of freedom that we'll do. There's multiple of things, but we're just trying to hit the high points here. We're not trying to cover all the bases and get you guys to educate yourselves, I guess you should say. There's lots of resources out there we've been promoting all along through this. Chris Ann Hall, the guest we had on the show and interviewed, chrisannhall.com. There's all kinds of information that she has out there going all the way back into the founding fathers' educational process that brought them to the place to create our Constitution. You got this National Center for Constitutional Studies, nccs.net. Great resources on studying the Constitution, and that's a place where you can get this book, The 5,000 Year Leap, which goes into great detail over these principles that we're just kind of skimming through. Of course, you got Dan Fisher and those boys down here in Oklahoma City at the Liberty Pastors that are involved in trying to bring forth the awareness and the teaching and education processes of pastorals. And they're more in lines with what I'm trying to do here is bring the relevance of the Word of God back into what these documents are in this country and how it's founded, because if it hadn't been for the truths of the Word of God, we wouldn't have any of these things. And these documents that we have are not the reason for our liberties or the reason for our ability to operate and move in this country, but those documents are the confirmation or the protections of those God-given rights. And that's the whole point that we've been trying to make throughout this whole series. And we're going to just kind of hit the high places, I guess, on a lot of the core, I guess you could say, issues that we're dealing with here. And I don't know what just kind of a overview, I suppose, of what we've done. We've talked about, the standard of sound law. These are the principles we have to have in this country. And, this would be what I would call a core that I've pulled out of here. And standard of natural law, for instance, the right to life, it's a natural law that says we know we shouldn't kill each other. We got to have a strong moral standard. The strong moral standard is what keeps us from killing each other. And all men are created equally with responsibility towards, our fellow man. So, well, it gets back into that, we won't kill each other. We have a moral standard. We have our fellow man telling us that, well, you shouldn't do that. So, but it's that responsibility with that equality that comes along. That's where it seems to be that we're laying these things down. And then we have the private property and the right to protect that property. We have life and liberty, and those go right hand to hand. The private property, life and liberty, we went over that just recently and how they are intertwined with each other, and one depends upon the other. And what I kind of want to deal with a little bit more today is the highest level of prosperity within that environment occurs with a free market economy and the minimum government intrusion in that. And with that as well, we're going to spend a lot of time on that subject right there. But going over these core issues here, we also have a strong local or self-government is required, and education. And we've talked a little bit about the education and the different things with our school systems and how the government's got involved in that. And that self-governing, that goes back to that morality, we got to be a strong moral people, and and we need to do what's right by our own selves, you know, for our government, because the government's really not responsible for keeping us in line. We got to keep ourselves in line. Yes, we have laws that are established for, you know, keep order and keep conduct the way it should be, but you know, it's up to me whether or not I violate those laws or not. Those laws, you know, you post a sign on the highway all day long says 55 or 70 mile an hour, whatever it is. But if I'm driving a vehicle that'll run 120, then it's my self-control that keeps me running the speed limit, 70 mile an hour, you know, instead of just running as fast as I want to run. Because it's not just about me, it's about all the other people that are being affected by my behavior when I'm exceeding the speed limit by excessive amounts. See, so that comes into that self-government, self-reliance, self-doing. So these are some of the things that I want to focus on, but well, those are the core issues. But this government that we have today, the point in all of this is they're violating every single one of these principles that we're talking about. There's a violation someplace along the way, either through the federal government or what's crept into the state government or within our own lives, that these things are being violated in every aspect. And this is the reason why this country is in such disarray and why we're in such a place that we are today with chaos and mayhem and everything's going on. They're trying to tear down the moral fiber and the internal security within the nation itself. And one of the largest mechanisms that they're using, and I believe that they're focusing some of the highest alert, I guess, of their attention, is this economic aspect. We have all these people running around today, you know, talking about the greedy capitalists. And I did a segment here a while back called just that, you know, those greedy capitalists, and dealing with some of this free market aspects in our country and how things are actually working and how they should be working as far as people being able to move and be prosperous, you know. And there's a book out there that was written in, when was this thing published? 1776, I believe, was when it was first published by a man named Adam Smith. It's called The Wealth of the Nations. And I strongly recommend that if you really want to understand economics and how this country's economic system should be functioning properly, you read that book, because that is the basis or the foundation, I guess you could say, of what began our nation operating different than the rest of the world as far as its economic systems, and getting us into a position of prosperity and wealth with a free market systems goes. Because you know what, basically what that teaches us in the laws of prosperity, I guess you could say, is the freedoms that we have in this country are the freedoms that allow a free market to operate in the way that it should be. Because without the ability for people to self-govern, and without the ability for people to own private property and be rewarded for their own labor, and all those things that we've went over with the pursuit of life and liberty and happiness, then the principles that are in that book of The Wealth of the Nations, as far as a free market system, they can't operate because the people don't have the freedom to operate within the system. Does that make sense? And in this system, I mean, just to kind of boil it down in a nutshell, it gives you the freedom to try something. It gives you the freedom to buy something. It gives you the freedom to sell something. And it also gives you the freedom to fail. See, and this is where the perversion has been so strongly represented the last few years, or the last 10 or 15 years. Is you heard the phrase that's made by the public, you know, deals in so many different places, where the banks was one of them, and then the automobile deals, oh, they're too big to fail. Well, that's an oxymoron, because if they fail, it's because they're doing a poor job in their management practices, and so they need to fail. And then when they fail, when they get too big to fail, if you want to use that term, then they break up into littler franchises which operate, and that keeps things going. That is one of the mechanisms that prevents monopolies from occurring and taking over a complete market. Because if you have one dominant source that's ruling the whole market, then it's no longer a free market, is it? And this is what's happening in so many places. See, and if our government was operating in the proper aspect in this deal, then it would be legally um, making laws to support or prevent illegal force in a marketplace, to compel the purchasing and sales of products. You see, we can't force people to buy a certain product. We can't force them not to buy a certain product. So we pass laws to keep that from happening, and they should be passing laws to prevent fraud, to prevent the misrepresentation of quality or locations or types of products and these kinds of things, so that people aren't deceived. They're actually buying what they know they should be, what they think they're buying. And then they should also be passing laws to prevent these monopolies we were just talking about, and keeping things into a place of competition. See, because when natural competition takes place, then you have successes and you have failures. And when those failures happen, then the successful companies absorb those assets that are still profitable to the market, and it continues on. See, and another thing that our laws are supposed to be taking place when it comes to our free market is they're supposed to be passing laws against what the forefathers called debauchery. And debauchery would be the cultural standards or immoral actions of society, and making the commercial exploits of them. In other words, making the commercial exploits of pornography, of obscurities, of drug use, of liquor use, of prostitution, of commercial gambling, of all of these things, which is exactly what our government seems to be promoting these days. If you've noticed these things, that's why I say everything that we should be looking for as a standard to keep our proper conduct, to keep order, to keep our system working like it should be. It seems that this government we have in place today is supporting the demise of those things. They're passing laws right now to make it okay to be in the drug culture. They're passing laws all over that says it's okay to gamble and organized gambling and selling more liquor in more places. I mean, for Pete's sake, they got these shot bottles in the fast strips now to where you can go in there. We don't want to be drinking and driving, but we'll just sell you a little shot so you can, hit that dude and throw the bottle away before you get out the door and walk into the car, because after all, you're buying gas, right? Or come on, hello. It goes on and on with the pornography, and these vices and these things are going on in our country right now. They're rampant. And why are they rampant? Is because they're being protected, see? And these monopolies, they seem to be just, we're protecting these monopolies. Oh, these banks are too big to fail. These car manufacturers are too big to fail. What else is too big to fail? We got to keep this stuff going. And it's just the opposite of what they ought to be doing to support a free market system, see? So because of that, we've got all of these things going array, and we've got this system in our country that's basically promoting Karl Marxism, which is the government owns and controls all of it, and we got to run, into a place to where the government has all the answers. But the reality of it is the government doesn't have the answers, and they never will have the answers. See, we got this situation with our banks going on, which started in about the times of Franklin Roosevelt. That president everybody says is so great, goes right back to that 1900 generation that I'm always talking about. In 1929, the general consideration of the watershed separated the new collectives, or the new age people, from the old and rugged individualist age. You see, that we had the republics of checks and balances by limited government, because before the 29, we had the individual doing their own thing. They were being rewarded for it, and they were working. They were making the thing. But then we want to start in with this industrializing thing. We want to start in with this taking control of these things. And in the 20s, they started hollowing out the colleges and started teaching this Karl Marxism, and all of these other things started creeping into the school systems and started perverting the national mindset of what should be and what shouldn't be, you see. And we started these things called the national, what is it? What not? It wasn't the Federal Reserve. It was, it's a Federal Reserve today, but they were called National Investment Boards. That's what it was. And they were going to be the future systems of dealing with our finances, and we can draw these things into dealing with the bankings and all of that